to Atlanta Live. I'm your host, Rafael Augusto, and I'm here with Dr. Bridgette Hester. Welcome to the set of Atlanta Live.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Talk to me a little bit about what God has been doing in your life, because I looked at your book. In the book, no doctor, there's a doctor. Now, you're a doctor, right? So you've accomplished something tremendously, a great accomplishment.
Yes, I did.
So talk to me about that real quick.
I graduated in January. I got my degree in human services. I run a nonprofit foundation in memory of my late husband. That's my primary focus.
Okay.
And I'm also a part-time adjunct professor for the University of Phoenix and Strayer University over in Alabama.
Okay. And that ministry or the foundation is called the Hubble Foundation.
Correct.
Okay. Now, obviously, there's a story behind that.
Yes, sir.
How the Hubble Foundation came to be. Walk us a little bit through that.
Okay. In 2010, on July the 22nd, I got a phone call after I had come home early from work because I had been up the entire night before.
Okay.
And I came home and I took a nap, and my phone kept ringing, and I was like, I don't know who that is. I'm not answering that. And because I was not going to answer my phone unless it was my husband. And finally, somebody just text messaged me and said, would you pick up the phone? John's got into an accident. And I was like, oh, brother. So I immediately get on the phone. Now, to understand the adrenaline and why it was so, I mean, anybody is going to get excited when they hear their spouse has been in an accident.
True.
My husband, my late husband, was a tower climber. He would scale the cell phone towers, communication towers, and that's what he did for a living, up and down, up and down. And he had been on a tower that it's called it's a guided tower. It's tall and skinny, and it doesn't self-support itself, so it has to have the guided wires down to the side. And there had been a third-party company, not his company, but another company that was out there, and they were maneuvering a 33-foot bucket truck and did not use the spotter. And when he backed up the 33-foot bucket truck, he took out a wire, which then caused the tower to collapse. So when I get the phone call of there's been an accident and it's emphatic in the text message, I know it's not good. But he had, you know, like a torn ACL before, and he got his finger caught in a boom.
So you had some close calls.
Yeah. So, and I didn't even understand, I don't think, the severity of it on the phone. I mean, I did to the point of I was out of the house very quickly. I was gone. But, and it sounds really kind of harsh, but, you know, I had asked him, I said, how bad is it? You just need to get to the hospital. No, it's not what I asked.
That's right.
How bad is it? And I got the exact phrase of, sweetie, his arm and his leg look like hamburger meat. I just need you to get to the hospital.
Lord.
And I'm like, okay, that's what I needed. And he was also working with a coworker, Barry, and Barry died on scene. So all the while I'm getting this information on him as well. And so I dart out the door and I go down to, I was going to Anniston initially to the one hospital, and then I get a phone call. You need to leave. No, you need to go to Birmingham. He's been life flighted. I'm like, life flighted? What do you mean life flighted? You just told me it was an arm and a leg. So I get down there. He was in surgery. By the time I saw him, this arm was gone and this leg was gone, or part of it, from here down and from here down. And then they took him back in for abdominal surgery, and then he went to ICU. And I never got to talk to him. He never woke up. Wow. And after he died, I said something, I learned more about tower climbing and the conditions they work in and how little it's regulated, and I decided I needed to do something to carry his name on, because if one of his guys had gotten killed, he would not just have gone on with his life and done nothing. He would have done something in their memory.
Okay. So you started the Hubble Foundation.
Correct.
And my understanding is that you give scholarships.
I give scholarships to children who've lost a parent in the industry.
Okay.
I also am working with another nonprofit that works with fatalities in the workplace in general. It's the USMWF, United Support and Memorial for Workplace Fatalities. And Tammy Miser with that group is helping me try to chase after legislative changes with OSHA, changes in law, which is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. I understand that.
Absolutely.
My foundation's also working to possibly, well, no, not possibly, we're going to come up with a piece of equipment that helps keep the climbers tied off while they climb.
Okay.
Because generally speaking, Johnson's accident was it was a freak accident. A lot of the deaths that are incurred in that industry are because people are not tied off the way they're supposed to be. The tower maybe doesn't have the best maintenance and pieces of it are faulty.
Okay.
Any number of things. So we do that as well.
So now.
Yeah, and I also award instructor training to one climber a year.
Okay. 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 I'm gonna read something to you, and you tell me what comes to mind.
Okay.
It says, learn to do right, defend the oppressed.
Isaiah 1:17.
Take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. What does that mean to you?
I can't really almost put it into words. It is the foundation for
And it's
Hubble
okay
Foundation.
to get emotional.
And
okay.
it's the foundation for the Hubble Foundation. These kids lost a daddy. And these wives have lost their husband. And in that industry, there's not that many. There's 8,000 to 10,000 at any given time. So it's easy, not for the guys and the ladies climbing because they live with it every day. Those are their brothers and their sisters they climb with. But it's easy, you know, because we watch the news and we become desensitized. And it's, oh, somebody else died at work, dang, you know, and people just move on. These kids lost their dad. Often the family loses the income that they had to survive. These people don't need to be forgotten either.
True.
And so that.
So this book is based on, this is what inspired you, Isaiah 1:17, right?
The butterfly inspired
The butterfly.
me. And Isaiah 1:17.
So talk about that.
When I got Godwinked.
When you got Godwinked,
I got
absolutely.
Godwinked. The day after Johns died, and my present husband can now attest to this, I lived on my front porch for like a month. And the day after, I just sat on the porch, I cried, I sobbed, you know. And I was sitting on the porch and a little tiny black and yellow monarch butterfly, similar to how the one on the cover looks. It flittered around and it floated and it landed on my knee. And then it would go to my foot and then it would come back to my knee and it would, you know, all over me. And I was like, that's bizarre because they normally don't land. So I went in, I got a wash rag because I was all puffy. I laid my washcloth out, landed on the washcloth. I took and I twirled it around and it was just hanging on, you know, and I'm like, what are you doing? And I noticed that as people started to come, he would flutter and he'd leave, and then he'd flutter and then he'd leave. And as soon as I had enough people around me to support me, it went away.
It went away.
And I saw that same butterfly 3 weeks later. As sure as I'm sitting here, I know it was the same butterfly. And this big. And was coming at me on the front porch. And then one of my friends opened up the front door and it.
Okay. So you got Godwinked.
I did.
What does Godwink mean?
I believe Godwink, having a Godwink, or when you get Godwinked, that's when God sends you a little piece of comfort or a little piece of, I'm right here. You're not by yourself. I'm right here. And I still get them. I mean, I'll get them, especially right after Johns died. If I needed it, I'd be like, I could really, really use a butterfly right now within 60 seconds almost every time.
Okay. So you talked about, I asked you your two favorite chapters in the book. You said 1 and 7. Give me a piece of 1 and give me a piece of 7.
The totality of chapter 1 is a blow-by-blow of the day Johns died. And people may consider that bizarre, that that's one of my favorite chapters, but I think that chapter 1, I think I was extremely raw when I wrote it, and I let everybody know everything about that day because I didn't feel like it was going to do any good to tell anybody about it if I was not honest, and how bad it hurt. I mean, I've had grown men that are friends of mine text after chapter 1 saying, can I quit crying now? And I'm like, I'm really sorry, but you're good after chapter 1, I promise. You know, and I like chapter 7 because it is not only the next day after it transpired the day after chapter 1, it's a total, it's almost like a total mirror opposite. It's extreme anguish and extreme pain and extreme sorrow with the glimpse of joy and the glimpse of happiness and comfort that was down the road that I couldn't see then.
Well, it talks, when you start chapter 7 in part 2 of the book, which is life after death.
Right.
So there is life after a tragedy.
Oh, absolutely.
There is life after
yes.
that. What's that transition like? Talk to me about how you transition into chapter 7, the Godwink and life after death.
Well, for everybody, it's going to be different. And I didn't really, I don't think I recognized what had happened with the butterfly. I mean, I did, but I didn't understand the significance of it. The lady that helped me write the book is Terry Lang, and she swears she didn't help me write the book, but she helped me pick out scriptures, and she was just instrumental with me. And she's the one that had first told me about the Godwink, about what that was. And for me, I don't think I recognized it right then. I think it was just later, after I'd started going back to church and I had built, relationships with my church family. And I think that the process of that, I can't underline the importance of my church family enough in the healing process. And I was real resistant to go back to begin with. I mean, I thought I was testing the structural integrity of the building. So, after I started to go back, I really felt comfortable and I really felt loved and like I had a church family, not just people I saw every Sunday.
Okay.
And that kind of
So it started the healing process. It started the life after death, which you didn't know was coming down the road. Now, and you mentioned earlier in our segment that you've remarried.
I have.
Okay. And how has that been?
Oh, I'm blissful. He's fabulous and wonderful. And oddly enough, he is actually a very good friend of my late husband. They grew up in the same town. They hung out together. He used to come over to the house and hang out with me and Johns when we'd watch races or football. He'd bring his daughter over, and it just, I was really comfortable around him. When I was having issues with my faith or questions and stuff like that, I could talk to him. And it just kind of progressed later into a relationship. And now I'm just married and tickled.
Married and tickled.
I am.
So when you are now this ministry, you're back in church, right?
Okay.
And no, I don't mean now, but after that, you got with your church family. They were there. They supported you. Where does your writing begin? What really inspired you to start writing? How long was the process after
I had actually started a book before that. And the bulk of that first book is in there. But it is kind of rough because, I decided I was going to finish the book after. And I said, well, before I do that, I need to reread. And I was just mortified with myself because I was like, oh, I can't type. I can't write that. So I rewrote it in most of it. And I did it mostly because it was a cathartic thing. I thought, well, if I write it out, it'll help with the healing process. And, and then about somewhere in there, I couldn't tell you exactly when, I got a, hello, you need to finish that so we can publish it. And I was like, really? Because I'm still not really good on discernment. Sometimes I think I hear them and sometimes I think it's me. And then I've realized I have telltale signs when I know it's the Holy Spirit talking to me.
Right.
So, I was like, okay, well, if you say so. So I say we because, he really guided the whole process. And so once it was done, I said, if I'm supposed to publish this and I'm supposed to publish it through this publisher, I need something. I need a confirmation. I need Godwink. And sure enough, later that day, just big old butterflies.
Now, I noticed that you were writing the book, right? You were writing it. And then you said at one point that God tapped you. But I've read somewhere that you realized that God himself was writing this book.
To a very large degree, yes. Because, I was on this weird deadline because I had to finish my dissertation. And it was like I felt just under the gun, so to speak. I'm like, if we need to get this done, you're going to have to just let it come forth, And I've probably wrote the last, there's 14 chapters, right? I think there's 14 chapters. I think I wrote the last 5 chapters in a week.
Wow.
It was, and it was just like, I mean, that was all him. That was not me.
Okay. So chapter number 2, right? Chapter number 1 is about the day John died. And then chapter number 2 is all about you. Just
kind of some background, my friends, my the people that are important to me and how they played into my life and my marriage, or how they were a support system. Just kind of a smattering. I mean, if I had wrote any more, I didn't want to bore anybody to death about my personal life.
So chapter 13, the good life.
Grace.
Okay.
Realizing that it's free and that he gives it to you. Realizing that it doesn't matter how bad you've messed up. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter if you've been angry at him or not angry at him. You know, there's peace, and in its totality. You know, somebody asked me once to describe the process or how I got from where my lifestyle before to my lifestyle now. Because, I mean, I used to be real social and this sort of thing, and I didn't go to church, and I smoked and I cussed and I drank, you know. And so, and the difference was the grace and the peace, and which are 2 things I didn't know I would get after John's died. But the good life to me is just letting God have complete control over everything I do.
Where can people pick up your book?
They can pick it up at Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, or they can go to my website for the foundation, which is www.hubblefoundation.org, or they can go to www.hesterbook.com.
Hesterbook.com. And are you available for speaking engagements?
I am.
All right, awesome. You heard it here. The author of Godwink, Bridgette Hester. Go to her website, get this book, pick it up, invite her to your church, invite her to your conference. Just because you went through a tragedy doesn't mean that life is over. There is life after death. We're going to go to the phones right now. We want you to pick up that number right now.